Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is session 4 of Personal Outcome Measures Decision Making. I'm Jill Westring. Kathy Yadamak is also on the line. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, everyone.
So we do this together. As we know, this is about an hour, and we're going through natural supports, friendships, intimate relationships, and personal information today. We will be, for those of you that have been attending the last 3 sessions, you kind of know what we do, and I need to just 1 second. Audience view. We've been discovering life as it is today for Joe. And Joe, for those that have not been attending, Joe has been the person that we have been discussing and discovering about his life for the last few sessions, and we'll continue to do that through the next 2. Scenarios are given and polls are taken for decisions for each outcome and support. Each session and scenario is built upon the previous ones, and you have handouts on your screen or from the webinar that you can print those out. So if you're joining this next month, you can get up to speed on those. Previous and present scenarios are available there. Each webinar is recorded for you. I wanted to start before we go because it'll keep a couple questions out or answered for you before we start, is that with yes/no decisions, you will see, and I'll just go to one for a moment, that based on the answers there are the yes, the no developing plans, aware but no plans, or no not in place. For this particular webinar and scenario and decision making, you need only know if it's present or not present. Also, there have been questions about for inter-rater reliability, whether it will be divided into the no and aware, or no developing plans, or no not in place. And that answer is no also. For inter-rater reliability, it will simply be a yes or no decision. Those areas of the other ones are for data and to see where your organization is or where the person is. You might be developing plans for lots of people, but you're just not there yet. I just wanted to clarify that just a bit. A little bit about Joe before we begin is that he lives with 5 other men in a licensed home. He has no guardian, proxy, power of attorney, or advocate. He speaks through his actions, for example, by either pushing away from someone, or using a high-pitched vocal sound to show displeasure. He will also move toward things that he is interested in, such as going out from the house or going out and away from his day services. The Human Rights Committee reviews and agrees to any restrictions, including medication, and any of the house rules that would fall under treated fairly, as well as consents and those sort of things. An activity log is in place and attempts are being made to find preferred activities for Joe. It is known, however, that he does not like crowded areas and crowds of people. So with that being said, we're going to just go ahead and start with personal outcome measures number 12, natural support. And the decision-making questions for those, if you have your manual, are on page 54. And so we will start with the scenario. Those of you that have been involved with this, I read it so that I know when it's been read by everyone, so I will just read this out loud to everyone. Staff report that Joe has a preferred staff and seems to have built a trusting relationship with him. His name is James, and he usually works mornings, Monday through Friday. The organization has made contacts with possible leads for family members of Joe's, and 2 months ago, contact was made with a distant cousin, Cynthia, who lives in a different state with a family of her own and has never met Joe. She gave the organization some additional names of cousins and an aunt and uncle, Marie and Joseph, who are retired and live in Florida. However, she did not have any current phone numbers or address for them. Joe's program manager, Kyle, said that he is trying to find a phone number or address for them. Joe again has no guardian, health proxy, or power of attorney. Human rights reviews above areas on annual basis, that of guardianship and health proxy or power of attorney. And the organization has sought to find a suitable advocate for Joe, but has not been able to do so. So with that being said, we look at the personal outcome questions. Does Joe have a natural support network? And if the answers to 1 is yes, that he does have that, does Joe have enough contact with the people in his natural support network? If the answer to 1 and 2 is yes, the outcome is present. If the person does not have a natural support network, and number 1 is no, is it due to informed personal choice? And if due to that, the outcome is present also. We will do a poll for you to determine. You may use the poll open. Thank you. You may use the other ones, but it will all go into no as a whole. There are additional considerations if you are on the decision-making page.
Jill, I'm sorry, I put up, it is outcome, sorry.
Okay. We're good?
We're good.
Okay. We'll close in just a few seconds. 3, 2, 1. Poll closed.
Overwhelmingly, Jill, 98% of the audience says no, the outcome of connected to natural supports is not present. 2% would say yes, the outcome is present for Joe.
Okay, very good. The outcome is not present for Joe. If we're looking back and hopefully, you know, the staff, again, he has a trusting relationship. However, that is what we call kind of an unnatural support network, and that they're looking for things, but it is not present at this time. That's correct. We'll move on to the supports. Has Joe's natural support network been identified by the organization? Does the organization know the status of the relationship? And has the organization provided support for Joe's relationships within that network if needed and requested? Does the organization recognize and promote opportunities for Joe to develop natural support networks? Based on the answers to these questions, are individualized supports in place to facilitate this outcome for Joe? Poll open. I can go back to the scenario. Sometimes if you don't have that in front of you, it's helpful. We'll close in 5, 3, 2, 1. Poll closed.
And Jill, the results of this one are that 31% of the audience says the support is present for Joe. 69% say no.
The support for Joe, the answer to that is that it is not in place. They're aware of some developing plans. I'm not sure about developing plans. They're aware, and they're trying to find. Kyle is trying to find a phone number. What we're looking for in this is the last question of 12D of recognizing and promoting opportunities for people to develop natural supports. So we would continue to look for those that might be outside of natural family or blood family, if you will, biological family, and start to look for additional sort of natural support networks. The additional considerations are the natural supports are typically people who have a lasting commitment or connection with each other. An extent and frequency, we're not sure of that at this point. And And we don't know his type and frequency, remembering that this is a type and frequency one. Are there any questions?
So, Jill, the first question is about whether or not, how does James fit into this in terms of being a natural support? Is it possible for staff to be a natural support?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is that generally happens when the staff is no longer a paid support and is not being paid to be that friend or that natural support. We certainly see that there is a trusting relationship, and that's beginning. But James is still a paid staff, and we don't generally regard paid supports as a natural support.
Okay, for James, and the next question is for James. You didn't talk about whether or not what's going on with his parents. If his parents are deceased and there's no one for him to be connected to, that used to be considered the outcome was met. Has something changed?
It has changed, and it's, if you look at the decision making, if you look at the past one and this one, the additional considerations were that there were none, and what we're looking for is, does the person want a relationship with someone? I mean, we've got an auntie and an uncle that we don't know anything about, and some cousins, so there are some actual relatives that we haven't found yet either. However, it's simply having a friendly person in your home that's being paid to be friendly to you and paid to be caring for you. It is, again, we're always looking for that support outside of a paid relationship.
Okay, thank you. There's one more question. In additional consideration, it also talks about whether the person desires a relationship, and you might have just said that, but how do we determine from Joe if he's unable to really communicate that by voice? How do we assess the desire for a natural support network?
Right. Well, first we have to find them, and then if they are willing to be a part of it, it's to kind of build that and say, guess what? A cousin of yours we found a cousin of yours, or your auntie and uncle in Florida. Here's a picture of them. And so it would be a continuing sort of explanation to them, get some pictures, maybe connecting by letters or email or FaceTime or that to kind of help Joe determine that. But at this point, it's really kind of an unknown entity.
Right. So in order for it to be an informed decision that he doesn't want a relationship, we'd be looking at what has his education, experience, and exposure been in order to help guide us in knowing he doesn't want one.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Very good. Well, then we'll move on to friendships. And people have friends. And again, that begins on page 55 of your manual with decision making on page 57. Joe's friends. Joe lives with 5 other men in his home, in which everyone has their own bedroom. He also attends a segregated day service program from 8:30 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. Staff report that everyone in the residence is Joe's friend, except one man who appears to tease him. They also stated that Joe considers staff members his friends too. When asked how Joe defines friendship, staff said that if people are nice to him and respectful of his personal space, they are friends. They go out together and shop together and go to church together. Excuse me. The program manager stated that Joe does not seek anyone out in the home except for James, the morning staff person. The day service staff said there is no one that Joe seeks out to sit with or be with during the day. He is polite and quiet and seems content to do whatever task is at hand as long as it is not crowded. Staff said that Joe received his communication device, an iPad, from his speech therapist last week. There are only a few things on the device currently, and they're trying to figure it out. Staff send it with Joe in the mornings, but are not sure if he's using it at day services. They are hopeful it will help Joe make friends. With that, the outcome questions are, does Joe have friends? And is Joe satisfied with the number of friends he has and satisfied with the amount of contact with his friends? The answers to 1, 2, and 3 are yes, the outcome is present. If he has no friends, is it due to informed personal choice? And if so, the outcome could be present also. We will take a poll. There are additional considerations. We'll close in 3, 2, 1. Poll closed.
And Jill, for this one, 29, almost 30% of us say the outcome for having friends is present for Joe, and 70% say no, the outcome is not met.
According to the decision-making with the POMs, the outcome is not present. Does he have friends and satisfied with number of friends and the amount of contact? Staff is saying that everyone in the residence is Joe's friend. We're not really figuring out what that friendship is, how he defines that, that he's not seeking anyone out. Is that because, again, he doesn't have the experience or the education or to figure out, is it because of his communication that it has become a barrier or an opportunity, if you will, to start to find people that have the same things that he wants? And the additional considerations, if Joe has no prior experience, friendships are not expressed a clear choice in making it, that's what's expected in order for an outcome and support to be present for him. For the support questions, does the organization know Joe's preferences and need for friends? Are supports provided to assist the person with developing, maintaining, and enhancing friendships if needed? Based on the answers to those questions, are supports in place? Just do yes or no. I'll go back, polls open. Close in 3, 2, 1. Poll closed.
So, Jill, overwhelmingly, yes. 87% say no, the support's not present for Joe. 13% feel that there are supports in place for Joe.
Okay, if you can hide the polls, according to our answers, the support is not in place. It appears, or it sounds like, when staff say that they are hopeful that Joe will make friends, it appears that they might be aware, but there are no real plans. The iPod is there. The concrete plans of developing that to start to look at friendships and what that really means. I mean, I have many people that are nice to me, but that I would not consider friends or are friendly to me even. But are not real friends. So again, it's helping Joe determine what is it that niceness and just not bugging me sometimes is friendly, but it is not a robust sort of support for him. Any questions?
So, Jill, the first question is about, sometimes people with autism or people with other disabilities have a difficult time developing relationships. Would it be kind of accepted that the characteristic of someone with autism would mean they don't want to have friends?
Gosh, I can't answer that as in a yes or no. I mean, there's so many variations and people with autism. I've seen people with great friendships, and then people that are only connected in a way with family. And so it would really be, again, very individualized, that we would be looking at what that is. And I many times people with autism, it's communication and those sort of things. So again, do we have robust communication things in place for people? What happened? Oh, my slideshow went away, sorry. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to enhance or build relationships. It might not be complete friendships, but it might be also. I'm sorry, I just can't answer that yes and no.
Thank you. That's the only question so far. So,
okay, if there are no more questions, we'll move on to intimate relationships. What we want to remember as we go into this, because we have wonderful discussions about sex when it comes to intimate relationships, that is not the only intimacy that we look at. We look at the social, emotional, spiritual, work relationships and other relationships outside of that. We're looking for something beyond just a friendship for that. So with intimate relationships, and we are on page 60 for the decision making, 58 for the definitions in the manual. Staff report that Joe is closest to James, his morning weekday staff person. They also report that James is the one person that Joe will seek out and trusts the most. When Joe is upset in the mornings before going to day services, James is the one that can calm him. If James is not working that day, a phone call is made and Joe seems to feel better after hearing his voice. Staff indicate it's very difficult to determine what Joe might want in this area. They said that they hope the iPad will help determine a lot of things that Joe wants or prefers. They would like more training on using the iPad so they can add additional items to the program. Staff do not fully understand how to teach Joe how to form, pursue, and maintain relationships. They are aware that his cousin Cynthia has been contacted, and weekday staff did know that he had a faith-based if he had a faith-based relationship, and were not aware of which church he attends. Kyle, the program manager, said that Joe went to church, but that he only attended and had no relationships within the church, although he had heard that some lady at the church had given Joe a cookie when he was picked up last Sunday. So for intimate relationships, we'll move on to the outcomes. Does Joe have intimate relationships? If yes, is Joe satisfied with the type and scope of those relationships? If the answer to 1 and 2 are yes, the outcome is present. If the answer to 1 is no, is it due to informed personal choice? If so, the outcome is present. We will poll this. Polls open. We will close in 3, 2, 1. Poll closed.
Jill, 4% of us believe that Joe has an intimate relationship. There's evidence of the outcome in place for him. 96% said there's not enough evidence to say that Joe has intimate relationships.
Very good. And Kathy, can you hide the poll results? Thank you. That is correct. The outcome for Joe in this particular area is not present. Again, he's closest with James, and he spends 5 days a week with him, and 8 hours a day for 5 days a week. But with staff not understanding how to teach that, or having a hard time determining what Joe might want in this area, now with the iPad, and as they're getting some additional items on that to really talk to him about that, and get some pictures up and some things that might be having common with some folks, it might lead to a friendship. It might lead to something more intimate than that. Any other questions? We'll go to the supports. Does the organization know and understand the person's preferences, Joe's preferences for intimate relationships? Do they assist Joe to explore and evaluate experiences in order to make informed choices? Does the organization provide support to Joe to pursue, form, and maintain intimate relationships? Has the organization addressed any barriers to the person having intimate relationships? Based on the answers to these, are supports in place that facilitate Joe having intimate relationships? Additional considerations are present for this one. Not present, but are in the manual, page 60. Poll open. We'll close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Poll closed.
So, Jill, 6% say there is evidence of support for Joe to have intimate relationships. 94% say there is not evidence of supports in place for Joe to have intimate relationships.
The support for Joe in intimate relationships is not present. There are some things that the organization started to do. They're aware that they don't have the information on how to do that. It might require some more understanding of staff on how to teach, some training for them, some education on that. Staff indicate they're having a difficult time in determining this. So without the determination of that, understanding his preferences for relationships is not present. And they're hoping, but they don't have a plan yet for that. Addressing barriers to having that, the iPad, kind of putting a lot of hopes on that iPad. So we're looking forward to what's going to be happening for Joe down the road. Any questions?
So there are a couple questions. Could you tell us an example of someone who has some of these outcomes in terms of relationships with natural supports, friendships, and intimacy, who we have more difficulty understanding because they don't communicate in what we might consider typical ways? Do you have some stories you can share with us?
Well, there are many stories. Oftentimes it will be with family, and that is a point that the expression of that. Many times there are intimate relationships in spirituality. We find, that there is a definite want to go there, and there are spiritual relationships with either the pastor, the priests, the rabbi, whomever that might be. We don't always find that there are intimacies. I mean, as everyone has, and it really is trying to determine that. Some people, like a lot of people in those close relationships, others need one best friend to share things with. So everything from that, again, that emotional or spiritual or connectedness, that I can trust you with my heart, I can trust you with my secrets, and know that you won't hurt me, won't harm me, no harm. So specific ones, I don't have one in particular. I can find one. Kathy, you might have something that pops to mind immediately.
No, I think, it's again the same way that, that you talk about it. It's such an individualized thing for people that sometimes we know because of their actions that they would like to have a closer, more trusting relationship with someone. And sometimes that's physical, and we know that because of some of their behavior. So I think that we have to pay attention to all of the communication that they provide to us. Two more questions. One is, do you have some suggestions or some strategies on how what kinds of things people might do to increase the likelihood that someone would have relationships?
Well, for Joe in particular, he's going to church. There seems to be someone that has noticed him. So we start to look at that. If we look at our own lives of how we have learned about people and begun friendships, and are there things that we know that there are things that interest Joe, such as the YMCA? He likes to swim. Is there a swim club or swimming lessons that he could be involved in? Because intimate relationships really are usually built upon starting a friendship, and then you learn to trust, and you learn that there are those good and bad things. So sometimes I think it's that we need to really have lots of discussions with our staff and how we learn that. I know that I've built some through school, and some through work, and some have come and some have gone. But it's always an ebb and flow for those, and sometimes we make bad decisions on intimate relationships also, those things that we trust. So it really is just starting to look for how can we get people connected outside of someone that you live with and go to work with, or go to your day program with, and then you go shopping with them and you're with them 24/7.
Thank you. So so it's clear that there aren't supports in place for Joe with his current situation. But would you agree that there are plans being developed, that staff are aware, or do you think that no plans are in place?
No, as we said before, they're aware that we might want to look at it, so they can add to that. If we go back to the friendship, hoping to make some more friends, getting some pictures, figuring those things out. I think that some of the staff are aware. And I think the iPad, I can't say that the iPad was there to develop relationships, but certainly to increase communication, which in turn would help build friendships and relationships and have some commonalities that we could talk about. They're not extremely robust at this point. They're not, concrete plans saying, we really think Joe would like friendships from the things that he has shown us moving toward or not. And so, we're going to really help him kind of focus on that, for the next couple months, and see where we are with that.
Okay, that's all for the questions on this one so far, Jill. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
What popped up as I was saying that. Would you confirm that awareness includes Joe being aware of and interested in the plan?
I'm sorry? Again?
In order for the age, I think what I'm reading is, in order for there to be aware, does the awareness include that Joe is aware of the plan and interested in the plan?
Oh, sure. If in the next week we're trying to figure something out, and he just keeps pushing people away, or kind of running away from them or moving away from them, we might just have not found the right person, or it might be that, he's really okay because he really doesn't like a lot of people in his personal space or groups. So we're not going to take him to a concert to try and meet someone. because of the things that we already know what he likes. But he does like outside, and he does like swimming, and he enjoys the summer. So we've got some other opportunities coming up in the summertime if we kind of focus on this to see. Of course, he would be involved in it.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah. And also in looking back, he seems to like going places, just as long as it's not a crowd. So there might be some really wonderful opportunities for that. Any others?
Yep, that's all.
All righty, we will go on then to personal information. Kind of long, so bear with me here. Joe has files in the house where he lives, at the day services, and at the central office for the organization. The organization is in the process of moving information into an electronic filing system. It has not yet been completed. And individual support for Joe is at all areas, home, day, and central office. In all areas, that Joe review his file with staff each month. Joe's staff in his home have helped him personalize his file cover with pictures of things he seems to enjoy. Swimming at the YMCA, Joe and James outside on a sunny day, checking out books at the library, and using his new iPad are just a few. The file is kept on a shelf in an area that Joe can reach near the staff's work area. He can access the record anytime he likes, but has not initiated looking at it at this time. His picture is on the end, and it is red. A color staff feel is a favorite of his. No housemate has ever tried to take Joe's record. Staff are diligent in talking to Joe when they are going into his file, and at his annual meeting, Joe signs his consent forms. Although staff are not sure he completely understands what he is signing, the organization has excellent training in policy and procedures in this area. Joe has also started a journal or scrapbook of his interests and activities, and staff are exploring new experiences with Joe. They take pictures when Joe is going somewhere new, and are helping him take his own pictures. He then chooses which picture to place in his journal or on his record cover. The Human Rights Committee is vigilant in reviewing any consents and protection of information for Joe. If there are any consents needed, the chairperson of the committee is informed and the policy and procedure is followed, unless in the case of emergency medical treatment. And just as an aside, he has not had any emergency medical treatment recently. So with that information, I'm just giving you a second to look at it again. Personal outcome questions, and for personal information are on page 63, decision making for that in the manual. Does Joe know what personal information the provider organization has collected about him? What information is he most concerned about protecting? I won't read through all of those. 15.3, are Joe's desires about the sharing of information respected? And 4, is personal information shared with others only at the request of or with the consent of the person or his legally or her legally authorized representative? With that information, if the answers to 1, 3, and 4 are yes, the outcome is present. There are additional considerations on page 63 of the manual, and we will poll now. We'll close in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Poll closed.
So Jill, the results of this one are 34% of us find evidence of the outcome being present for Joe. 66% say no, we don't have the evidence.
The decision is that the outcome is indeed, yes, present for Joe. When we look at the personal information and our desires about that, And is it shared with only others? The feeling is that the organization is protecting and maintaining and educating Joe and looking at all of those things for that to be present. We're going to go ahead and do the support question and then the support decision making, and then we will open for questions. The supports for Joe. Does the organization know Joe's preferences for confidentiality regarding personal information? Does the organization obtain his consent or that of the legally authorized representative prior to release of any personal information? Are procedures implemented to respect Joe's wishes about the sharing of information? There is a poll open. We'll close in 5, 4, 3, 2. Close the poll.
We have much more pink than we do green. So most of the audience believes that the support for share personal information, that there's evidence for that being present. 68% say yes, 32% say no.
Sorry, I'm writing that down. Hang on a second. The answer to this is that yes, the supports are in place for Joe about his personal information. The additional considerations and as you're writing your questions, to look at that is the sharing of information through both written and verbal is considered in determining whether it's present. If Joe requires assistance to understand or share personal information and adequate supports are in place, the outcome is also present. So we saw that both outcome and support were present for Joe regarding personal information individualized for him. The floor is open for questions.
So there's a question about what about the information at the day program and at the central office? In the description, it seems the file review only applies to his home.
Actually, in here, it's the home and day services and central office. They do that on a monthly basis.
Okay, could you talk a little bit more about if Joe doesn't understand, if they're not sure that Joe understands what he's signing, how the outcome can be present for him?
Yes. Again, with your additional considerations, because he does require assistance to understand and the sharing of that, if the supports are in place and we deem here that the supports are very strong for him to make sure that the Human Rights Committee, that staff know that they're looking at that and with the knowledge that they know he doesn't, or they don't know, but they're not sure that he understands, but they are working with him to educate him and expose him to his file, make sure that he knows it is his personal file, going through that, and journaling and taking his pictures because he doesn't read the words, to access that and make those supports very strong. Then the Human Rights Committee is vigilant in reviewing any consents and the protection of his information because he does not have, they have deemed that he could probably use someone to help him make some of those decisions, but they're taking on that role at this point to ensure that his personal information is secure and protected. And trying to find out, again, what is important to him with the picture taking and adding those things. This is a really good discussion. It brings the importance of those additional considerations into a little brighter light. I think that sometimes we forget to look at those, and that we really do need to. We were vigilant. CQL was very vigilant when we were looking at these, to include in those additional considerations some of these things that come up kind of on a consistent basis. Any other questions?
So Jill, in some organizations, the requirement is that records are all locked. So, you know, it doesn't say whether this is locked. It's on a shelf and no one gets to it, but Joe can reach it if he wants to. What's the expectation around records being secure?
But we certainly don't want them to be available to anyone who walks off the street or anyone that lives within that home either. There are lots of ways that organizations get around that. I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, if you know differently, that there's no it's required by HIPAA that we keep things secure. There could be different his journal or a scrapbook, which doesn't need to be secured because there's no personal information that anyone could steal. Organizations also have had them that people keep them in their own rooms, which they might be locked and they have access to those with a key. Again, individualized, we wouldn't want to just say that everybody's is locked and they can't get to them without asking for them. As well as we go to electronics, what organizations are doing to allow people access to, not allow, but to give access to those electronic reports, which is an opportunity anyway. I'm not sure that I really answered your question. It's not, I don't know of any law that says they have to be locked. They just have to be secured and private.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is the HRC reviewing consents because Joe does not have an advocate, or is this an expected practice?
They are doing it because Joe does not have an advocate, and they have seen this as an issue that they want to take up and take on for him. Of course, the Human Rights Committee does anything for any restrictions and those things, but in this case, individually, they're doing it for Joe because he does not have one, and they have deemed that he probably needs someone to help him.
I think that's a great question, and I think you know, what we see is different practices in different agencies and in different states. In some states, there's they have guardians, state guardians, and so if Joe doesn't have an advocate, he might automatically get referred for a state guardian. In other states, they have kind of a surrogate decision-making committee that reviews these kinds of things. In this particular organization, they have the Human Rights Committee. In other places, it's, you know, the team looks at things and helps to make a decision. So we're looking at what's working for each person. So we have an expectation, CQL has an expectation that people's rights are supported and protected. And so we want you to do something that makes sense for that person and in that situation. I hope that answers it too.
Yeah, I was in an organization once that they had because they did not have that kind of state guardianship that they would do, and it was that other committee, and they called it like a consent committee for people that either had questions about things, including medical and financial sort of things, that they could take it to that separate committee that was outside of the Human Rights Committee. Other questions? Wow, you all rock. We're finished. Any general questions? We're a little early. I really appreciate all of your comments and your questions, and we hope that you join us for the next couple sessions. The next session is the first week in May. No, that's something weird, isn't it? The next session is not the first week, it's the second or the first full week, May 8th and May 10th. The webinar is at 10 a.m. on the 8th and 1 p.m. on the 10th, and we will be going through the next 4. Oops, I got the wrong one here, Kathy.
Okay, so the other thing, while we have a minute, and those of you that are ready to go certainly can go, but we've been talking about Joe and we've been making decisions about Joe. What we're going to do in a future webinar, and that you might hear about soon, is we're going to ask you to share with us some information that you've gathered in interviews where you've really struggled with, is the outcome present? Is the support present? Because there are sometimes some nuances. And so, so if you have those situations, watch for that opportunity, and we'll be looking forward to hearing your difficult scenarios and helping to come to some resolution or discussion about those.
And I'm sorry, we're going to be going through outcomes 16, 17, 18, and 19 in May, which is living, work, choosing services, and social roles. 16 is social roles.
Perfect. Thank you all very much for your time this afternoon. We'll look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
Bye-bye. Enjoy the day.